what do you say we get started? So hello, everyone, and welcome to your Bike Month mission, Make Every Ride Count. My name is Marley Townsend. I am the Communications Coordinator for the League of American Bicyclists. Today, I am joined by several members of the amazing League staff, including Lauren, Ken, and Bill. You'll hear from them later, as well as Thomas from Love to Ride. We are all so excited to have you here with us today, but before we get started, let's do a little bit of housekeeping. So just a disclaimer that this session is being recorded. It will be added to our YouTube channel. You can find us at Bike League or on our webinar archive at bikeleague.org/webinars. All attendees are muted, but we definitely want your questions and commentary, so please drop your questions and comments into the chat or Q&A at any time. Also, closed captions are available, so please don't hesitate to turn those on at any time if you need them. And before we dive too deep, I just want to introduce the League for those who aren't familiar. So the League of American Bicyclists is the oldest bicycle advocacy organization in America and possibly the world. We were founded in 1880 as the League of American Wheelmen, and early on, we focused on the Good Roads movement to get the first paved roads for bicyclists to ride safely. So we've been working in this advocacy space for hundreds of years. And today, the League continues to make biking better. As leaders, our commitment is to listen and learn, to define best standards, and share best practices to engage diverse communities and build a powerful, unified voice for change. And the League couldn't be what it is today without our national network of grassroots community support. This comes from over 180,000 local members and supporters, over 1,000 local groups and clubs, and hundreds of bicycle-friendly businesses, communities, and universities in all 50 states and DC. So we know we can't do this alone, and today that's why we're so excited to share with you how you can help make every ride count during Bike Month and beyond. So with that, I will hand it over to Bill to introduce what we'll be talking about a little more in depth today.
Hi there. Well, thanks a lot, Marley. Yeah, I'm very excited to be here with all of you. Thank you for joining us today for this exciting webinar. We at the League and the whole biking movement have been celebrating National Bike Month and the transformative power of biking through that month for the last 70 years. This is the month that we who wholeheartedly love biking and are being our best selves, our best bike friends to our family, to our friends, to our coworkers, to find ways to ride together, to encourage, to do whatever it takes to help people experience biking. We must be on bikes in May. This is the month for that. And so we as LCIs, League cycling instructors, are offering more classes. We club and ride leaders are putting together rides. We business leaders, we're finding new ways to welcome staff and visitors by bike. We community leaders, we'll be taking action to make biking a real option for everyone, no matter how they want to ride. We have the resources to help you do that on bikeleague.org and to do a whole lot more of that. It's something we've been doing for years. We've been in partnership with Love to Ride to make National Bike Month even better for years, from the National Bike Challenge and to more recently with the Drive Less, Bike More Challenge, where we encourage everyone to think about what is bike possible to transform many types of trips into biking trips instead of often car trips. We're excited to keep this partnership growing this year with this Make Every Ride Count initiative. And thanks to the excellent evolution of the Love to Ride platform, where together we can help break down the barriers to bicycling in our communities across the country so that we can have better bicycling friendly communities to transform lives and communities through the power of biking. I'm really happy that you all could join us. We're going to hear from Ken McLeod, the League's policy director, next, and then we get to hear from Thomas Stokel, the CEO of Love to Ride, to tell you all about that new exciting evolution and what this May is going to bring for all of us. So now I'm happy to introduce the League's policy director, Ken McLeod, to kick us off by exploring bike data sources, issues, and improvements. Over to you, Ken.
Thanks, Bill. So yeah, I'm Ken McLeod. I'm the policy director for the League of American Bicyclists. and I'm going to talk a little bit about the public data that is counting people on bikes and some of the issues with it and some improvements we might look forward to, and kind of why we need people to pitch in and make every ride count. So the league has published basically every national data source on bicycling and walking since 2018. We've done our benchmarking report on biking and walking, and our website, data.bikeleague.org, which is supported by the CDC's Active People Healthy Nation initiative to get 27 million people more physically active by 2027. And part of that is reporting on publicly available data sources about how much people bike and walk. And so we kind of have two major buckets of how people are counted biking and walking in the United States. We have publicly created data, which at the national level is usually from the Census Bureau's American Community Survey, which provides an annual estimate of the number of people who primarily use biking or walking to get to work. And we have the National Household Travel Survey, which is a periodic survey that looks at all trips. And then many states and cities have their own locally collected data. That could be people standing on the street and counting people, or that could be a variety of other sources. And then somewhere between public and privately created data is often bike share or scooter share data, which sometimes in a publicly administered program is publicly created data, but often is also created by the private organization that runs or operates that program. And then in the privately created data world, we have logging apps like Love to Ride that you can all participate in and crowdsource information. We have physical counters like EcoCounter, where if you go past it, it counts you. There's emerging connected vehicle data sources where new vehicles have sensors on them that can give certain impressions of the world around them, and that could include people biking and walking near them. And then there's data sources that are derived from phone apps that are tracking each and every one of us each and every day and kind of have algorithms that say this person might be biking or walking when they're moving around. So that's kind of the world of data that we operate in right now. And so that census journey to work data is probably our biggest source of data, the most commonly referenced source of data for how much biking and walking is happening in the United States. And it's all based on one question that is asked to a certain number of people every year, which is, how did you usually get to work last week? And they are required to choose one option. So if they combine biking or walking with any other mode and the other mode is a longer distance than biking and walking, they are the other mode type of commuter and not a bike and walk commuter. So this is a really valuable data set in that it is available every single year, and it is available for the entire nation, every single state, and most communities over 65,000 people. But it has a lot of issues in that it really only looks at that journey to work. And with the pandemic, only looking at the journey to work kind of became an even smaller lens on how much biking and walking is happening. So we saw a big shift in 2020 where there wasn't any one-year estimate reported. In 2021, basically all modes of travel to work were down significantly. And in 2022, we've seen a little bit of a recovery. But unfortunately, the big picture for biking and walking in recent years is slight decreases in the number of people and the percentage of people who are biking and walking to work. When we look at particular cities, there are some really bright spots. Like New York City has had amazing growth over the last decade, even compared to other large cities that have been making investments in bicycling. It's really had just an amazing trajectory of growth in the number of people who are biking to work as their primary form of transportation in New York City. When we zoom out at the state level, it's relatively rare for states to have high percentages of people biking and walking to work. And you can kind of see geographic differences where places in the South tend to have lower percentages of people biking and walking to work. The National Household Travel Survey is a more periodic survey. It typically comes out once or twice a decade. This is good context to supplement that biking and walking to work data, because this looks at all trips. So when we look at something like bicycling, we can see that trips to and from work are about 13% of bicycling trips, according to the most recent survey. And a lot of bicycling trips are kind of social recreational rides or to get to school. And that's the type of thing that's not captured in the American Community Survey, and the type of context at the national level that's really only provided by this data source. This is also an important data source because it tells us what modes people use for short trips. So short trips are trips that are more likely to happen by biking or walking, more likely trips where we can get people to bike more. Take that 1 mile, 2 mile, 3 mile trip to a grocery store, to a park, to a business or a restaurant. And this data source tells us that those short trips are the ones that are most commonly done by biking and walking. It also tells us, unfortunately, that for every distance over a mile, motor vehicles are the majority mode. But when you look at biking versus walking, biking tends to do slightly better for longer trips than walking, which really is clustered in that mile or less trip distance. So it is important to note issues with this National Household Travel Survey, particularly the most recent one. They changed the methodology, so there was a 94% reduction in the sample size for walking, biking, and transit trips. So there were only 298 cycling trips logged in the entire country for this survey in its 2022 iteration. So when I just said that information about what it tells us about biking, with only 13% of bicycling trips being to and from work, that is based on that 298 cycling trips that they captured in their survey sample size. So with your help logging your rides, we might, or we should be able to beat that sample size pretty easily. And just touching on a couple other counting data sources, there's bike share data. You can find it often through organizations like the North American Bike Share Association, NABSA, or the National Association of City Transportation Officials, NACTO. Both of them do a really great job of publishing that data. The Bureau of Transportation Statistics also has some bike share and scooter share information, but it's less related to counts. And then there was a long-running effort called the National Pedestrian and Bicycle Documentation Project, which has been used for some academic research and is still a methodology that some jurisdictions use to get people on the street, counting people biking, and having it in a format that is comparable to other places. And sorry that it is hard to read. I think we can share the slides. So maybe you can dig in there. And I just want to note, now that I've kind of talked about some of the publicly created data sources that we have, the Federal Highway Administration did a report to Congress on what are kind of the challenges and needs around bicycling and walking data. And non-motorized travel volumes were the most broadly applicable data identified. So getting more information about how many people are biking, where they're doing it, and why is the type of thing that's going to help the government and agencies move forward to create complete streets, better bicycling networks. It's a missing thing that we don't have a good handle on. So by making every ride count, we can improve our knowledge and improve the ability of our agencies to act on that knowledge. And so the thing that they said that they would do, or hope to do, is get more states to publish bicycle and pedestrian travel data in something called the Traffic Monitoring Guide. And they might consider making that a requirement in the future. In our last bicycle-friendly state survey, we found that 33 state DOTs reported having at least one count method. So, that is not all 50 states. That is not a full collection of data that we need. But there is some effort being done at the state level, and our federal government is looking at improving that. So we're hopeful that in the future, we will have better data from publicly created sources. But right now, making every ride count is important with other methods, like you will hear from Love to Ride in the rest of this webinar. So I think that is all my slides, and I'm happy to hand it over to Thomas.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Ken. Good to be with you all today. I'm going to share my screen and take you through some more detail on what is this Make Every Ride Count campaign this bike month. I'm going to give you a quick summary and intro. I'm assuming everyone can see my screen now. Thank you, Marley. So essentially what we're asking people to do is to make every ride count by rating their routes, by downloading our app, tracking where they're riding in their cities and communities, the places they're riding. We get the frequency they're riding for these short trips. And then we're inviting them to rate how comfortable and how safe they felt on different parts of the network. And you'll see here in a second, I'm going to play this short video where they felt safe and comfortable on the side street, and then went on the main road where they felt unsafe and uncomfortable. So it's super easy for people to rate their routes. I felt pretty safe on this quiet neighborhood street. But then I get to this main road here, and there's a painted bike lane at that beginning bit. So I felt a little bit uncomfortable because it's quite a narrow road. But then the bike lane, would you believe it disappears? And so I feel pretty unsafe and uncomfortable there. So really easy for people to feedback and give us that intel on which parts of their city, of their community, of their routes, they feel safe and unsafe. We can then aggregate all this data, and we can see your community in your city and where the problem areas are, where do people feel really unsafe, and where do people feel uncomfortable, and which parts of the network could do with some improvement. That's it in essence. I'm now going to get into a bit more detail. We'll talk about the data outputs and what it means for you and for your community. Essentially, to achieve this vision of a bicycle-friendly America, as Ken just noted, there are a couple of things that we need to do. And the first one is more data is better data. And it's 2024. If you think of any industry today, they're all using data. Data is at the core of how they operate, how they run, how they make decisions, how they evaluate their performance as an organization, as an industry, as individuals. And so by getting better data, it can help us to make better decisions. It can help us to prioritize. How do we spend this limited amount of money that we have for improving our infrastructure? How can we prioritize that money and spend it in the best possible way to have the biggest impact in our community? Data can also help us to make the case to elected officials, to local residents, local businesses, to our colleagues on why a certain project should get the green light and get some funding, or to make the case for some funding from another funder. And of course, measuring the impact. You know, when we're able to measure the impact that different biking infrastructure is having, that's going to help us to secure the next round of funding to build more infrastructure, because we can show the impact, the improvement in safety that where I showed you on the screen there, to say they put a protected bike lane on there. Then next year, we'll see that's now green, and we can say, hey, before we put in this bike lane here, 87% of people were unsafe riding here. Since putting in this bike lane, that's gone down. Now, almost everyone feels safe and comfortable riding on this street. The second thing that we need to do better is do things that have more scale. We're all working hard in our individual communities to make a difference. And what we want to do is do things that enable us to all pull in the same direction. And these types of national campaigns that will generate a national data set that will be benchmarked every year is something that is relatively simple for us all to get behind. Someone who isn't a bike advocate in a business, in a community that we know can take part in this too, and simply download the app and rate their routes and have their voice heard in this process. So all pulling in the same direction and doing more programs that scale. And that's why we came up with Make Every Ride Count. Because if you think back to the year 2007, it's a couple of years ago now, walking trips, right? Walking data. Some people wore pedometers. And you know, it's a bit of a faff. You put it on in the morning, you take it off in the afternoon, you look at the number and you press reset. And it's not so much work, just like opening an app like Strava, pressing start, pressing stop. That's not too much work, but it's enough work that most people didn't track their steps back in the day. And most people don't track all of their bike rides right now, especially the short trips. And essentially the world is missing all of these short trips that are happening for transportation. This type of data of where people are riding, how often they're riding, how safe do they feel riding in our communities. So our app has the ability, you can turn this feature on or off. We still have the start-stop tracking like a Strava or another app would, but we have the ability to automatically track all your short trips. So you don't have to get out your phone, press start, press stop. We're tracking automatically where you're riding. And this basically removes all that effort, just like Fitbit and now Apple Watch have revolutionized how steps are counted. Almost everyone is tracking steps now because it's easy, it's automatic, it's passive. I don't have to think, oh, I'm going to walk, go get some water. I better press the button to count my steps as I walk over there. It just happens. Now we've got the same thing for riding a bike. And so you can see on this visual here, there's a dashed line. And this dashed line is essentially the GPS is not turned on at that point. I've left the house and I'm biking, and we use machine learning algorithm and other phone sensors to determine if you're riding a bike or not. If you're riding a bike, then we turn on GPS. If you're not riding a bike, we don't track that trip. And basically, for all these everyday riders around the world, we want these everyday riders to use this app. We want to get the short trip data. And so, as I mentioned, we use the machine learning to do that, to automatically track your rides, automatically enter you into prize drawings, and of course, you can automatically help to make your community better for biking. Lots of other app features I won't get into. By all means, download the app and discover it for yourself. So we've got the auto logging and we've got start stop and lots of other features to discover. And then you get a list showing all your rides that you're doing. So nice and easy. And you can see these short trips that I would never record otherwise if it wasn't easy and automatic. People who didn't have the app, who were using Love to Ride before, who then downloaded the app, were basically getting 10 times more trips logged. About half of our app users are women, which is great to see. And biking, that varies quite a lot by type of riding, etc., and part of the world. Most of the trips are these short trips, which is great to see, these short utilitarian trips. And about 40% are the sort of interested but concerned. We want to engage those people. We want to hear their feedback about their experience of riding in our cities, because it will be quite different than a more experienced rider's experience of riding in that city. You can see here, this is people who've got both Strava and the Love to Ride app, and you can see, you know, we're getting all these short trips that otherwise wouldn't be being logged, basically. And you can see over time, even in the last few months, more and more trips are being logged on Love to Ride versus Strava, which is great to see. This is that feature I mentioned. So it's called Rate My Routes. That's the invitation. And you can basically paint with your finger, as you saw. The app actually remembers those ratings, so you don't have to like rate your street every time you ride down your street to work. You're rating the same thing. It remembers that. We don't ask you to re-rate that unless there's an infrastructure improvement. Then the next time you ride on that and go, oh wow, they put a bike lane here, awesome. Then we'll actually re-prompt you to re-rate that particular set of segments. Some of you might be familiar with the levels of traffic stress. There are 4 levels. Our rating sort of relates to that. You've already seen this beautiful user experience. Let's just dive into the back end a little. We've basically taken the OpenStreetMap data set, so a publicly global data set of the sort of street geometry, the roads, shared paths, bike trails, etc. And we wrote an algorithm that would basically divide up all the network into these 10-meter segments. So we've got these 10-meter segments. So you can see here, the colors just represent different segments. And what this means is any one of these colors here will have data on it. So we'll know how comfortable and safe people feel right here or right here. We'll know how many people have ridden across there, how many of those people were new to riding, how many were women, how many lived in this part of the city. So a really rich data set that can then be used. We can, of course, do heat maps and see where people are riding. So we know which parts of our network are getting the most volume at the moment. So we can look to prioritize investing in the places where people might already be riding. That might be one factor for prioritization. The level of stress, the level of safety will be another factor in prioritization. You would have noticed these filters here. So we can filter by trip distance, like just show me how people are getting around when they're riding for short trips. Day of the week, time of day, the trip purpose, time frames, how often people ride. As I mentioned before, if you filtered your community by the new riders, they're probably going to experience your network quite differently. And you can also do things on our planners dashboard where you can say, show me all the trips that start or end at this university or this railway station or any of that kind of it's called rideshare analysis. So this data can be used to identify these problem areas in our communities, you know. And in some cases, we might actually know that we've got a problem area, and this gives us now some data to make the case for investment and improving a part of the network. Hey, we're taking out 4 car parking spaces, and we are putting in a bike lane here because the vast majority of people feel unsafe and uncomfortable here. 87% of people feel unsafe and uncomfortable. As I mentioned, we can also use this to measure these changes over time and improvements in safety, which is great to see. Now, we do a whole host of things to ensure privacy, and I'll just mention a few now. We do have a public privacy policy that's very clear, but essentially no individual routes will be shared, no heat maps of an individual. They're not even publicly available. You'd have to screenshot it and share it some other way. We have no means of displaying that to anyone other than you. Only aggregated and anonymized views. So all that stuff is all just everyone in the city. You can't filter it down to see any individual person or routes. Obviously, app users can be anonymous. You don't have to register or create an account. You can just use the app as an anonymous user. There's a lot of things in here that we do. I'll just rattle through them quickly. Only the bike rides are tracked with GPS. You can log rides with start and stop instead of having the automatic tracking on. Users can delete rides. So we're doing a lot of things, including the minimum thresholds on the visuals. And I just want to, if anyone asks you, oh, is it automatic tracking, yada, yada, it's like, you don't have to turn that on. And there's a whole host of things that, you know, Love to Ride are doing to protect individuals' privacy. So that brings us back to, okay, we've got this technology, we've got this opportunity to get this data. So let's have a bit of a focus. Let's use this bike month as a window in time where we can say to people, hey, this bike month, let's make every ride count. And so we're doing this initiative with the League of American Bicyclists. It's a national effort. We're launching it in Bike Month, and we want to leverage this crowdsourced data, this sort of citizen science, to help us improve planning. And it's super easy to take part. People just download the app, track their rides, paint their routes, rate their routes. And lots of benefits for individuals. It sort of makes Bike Month a bit more meaningful in terms of contributing towards making your community safer and better for biking. It's obviously free for individuals to track their rides and rate, have your voice heard, and we've got some opportunities for incentives and for prizes. For state, local, regional governments, including advocacy groups, there's a lot of benefits because the data will be available online. So after Bike Month, we'll crunch all that data and we'll release these public heat maps. They'll be online, just like there's a Strava heat map. We'll have a Love to Ride heat map and a Love to Ride safety rating map that anyone can view. We've obviously got a lot of marketing materials to make it easy for you to get the word out locally, social media, posters, flyers, etc. And basically, it's another promotional tool not only to do this rating of your community, but also to support and encourage more people to ride. The Love to Ride app has other features, and so does the website around bike safety education, for example. We've worked with the League on some content there. The League has excellent bike safety education materials as well. And then it's an opportunity to join other cities who are also doing this initiative to get this nationwide data. And then finally, for companies, you know, if you're an employer or you work for someone, then this is an opportunity to support this initiative, give your existing employer base a bit of a boost. If you're doing something for Bike Month already, maybe a breakfast or another event, this is another dimension, another way to get people to participate in Bike Month, take part in this national effort, and get this data for your community. And interestingly, you'll be able to see if you've got a campus or an office, how are people getting to your campus and how do they rate the infrastructure to where you work, and which would be interesting. And once again, we like to make things easy and fun at Love to Ride. So making the materials, you just download them. And I'll have a QR code in just a minute, actually, for you to scan. So it's free for everyone to download the app, and there's these free heat maps. How do we make it sustainable? You know, Love to Ride as a company, we have to make money to do all this building of technology. And essentially, just like with Strava Metro, when they used to charge for that, and just like with other data tools, there'll be another layer which allows you to do all this analysis and export, and we'll have an agreement on all the data sharing and all that good stuff. And so, and that's obviously highly affordable. And then the other services we do, we sort of boost app usage, get more people using. And then we've got a whole behavior change framework, and we've been working for the last decade on encouraging and supporting more people to ride bikes using our behavior change framework and tools. That, I think, is my 15 minutes up. And by all means, scan this. We'll obviously, maybe we can paste this link in the chat, actually, and essentially download the promo pack. Anything you can do to spread the word, great, because the more people we have in your community who are downloading the app and using it, the more rich that data will be when you go to view it online later in the year and see how safe and comfortable different parts of your community actually are. So I hope that was interesting. Happy to answer any questions. I'll leave this up for another minute in case you're struggling to get your phone to focus on the screen and scan a QR code, as they often do. But happy to answer any questions or get into some Q&A. Oh, we've got some Q&A. How do you want to run this, Marley? What are you thinking?
Yeah, so I was going to throw on the screen another option for getting involved. So, and then we'll jump into Q&A from there.
Great. I'll stop sharing my screen.
Perfect. And I'll start to share mine once I have it up. Thank you all for your patience. Let's do portion of screen. Yeah. So, as Thomas said, great way to get involved with Make Every Ride Count is download the promo pack. Here's that QR code again. You know, we've been through this. Download the app, rate your route. And then for Bike Month larger in general, you know, it's great to make even more rides count by organizing Bike Month events in your community. So if you would like some promotional materials to help you make that happen, here is a QR code for just general Bike Month promotional activities. And here are a few key dates this month. Well, not this month, but during Bike Month for you to plan events around. So that is our take action section. And now we'll move into the Q&A.
Cool. I've actually got these open, and I could probably just ask and answer some of these that I know I can just deal with.
Perfect.
Let me, there's one here which says, can anyone else see these, or just us here? Do you know? Because if other people can read along at home, I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, I think
how would you account in the app for a situation where the intersection is more stressful than the route on either side of the intersection? It's a great example. Let me do a thing I try not to do very often, which is just try and show you the app with the ratings on it. And you'll see here, just say this intersection here, this is going from a path across to a bike lane. And I can actually just paint that really easily. I'm trying to do this here. See how I've just made that red now. So you can actually do it. You can paint individual 10-meter segments. So just say the intersection, either side of it was 10 or 20 meters, you can rate that. So that's one of the ways that we can make intersections have a different rating and show up differently in that aggregated view. Measuring non-work trips. Are you able to measure non-work trips, pleasure, exercise, errands, etc.? Yeah, so there's a few ways that we do that. One is you can give it a trip purpose. So you can tell us, was it for fun fitness? Was it to and from a meeting? You can do that manually. We're doing more stuff algorithmically, if you will. So if you do a trip that's 1.2 miles, chances are you're not trying to get a bunch of exercise in on a Sunday morning. Versus if you do a 25-mile ride, we can default the purpose of that trip to something. And you can change it, of course. You can say, no, I commuted 25 kilometers on that Sunday to work, but we'll default it to recreation just to save people from having to rate every single trip, and we get some data off the back of that. Um, is there a way to utilize the app for those of us who are holding cycle trip competitions locally for Bike Month? At present, we're planning to use Strava because we can see who all rode their bikes each day. I would love to use this app to capture this. Is there a way to monitor local club participants? Yeah, we've got a feature in Love to Ride called Clubs and Groups, and you can just sign up a club or group for free. And you can connect to Strava, and then it's another way of seeing it. The benefit of that is sometimes on Strava, I'm not sure this is still the case, but it was a while ago, you can only see sort of last week and this week for your club or group, and we have a long history of data for your club and group and ability to communicate through that. So check out and try out the clubs and groups feature, and that way people can use this. This is one that says from my friend Deb. So we're doing a month-long challenge, and we want to know how we can do both. If our folks in Sacramento are participating in our May is Bike Month challenge, can our work count towards Make Every Ride Count? Yes, that's the beauty of the Love Tribe platform. They can take part in this challenge. It's all on one platform, so the app will track their rides. They can rate their routes. We can send messages out to folks to say, hey, during the Bike Month challenge, make sure you also help to make your community and your routes safer and better for biking. Click here to learn more, and they can find out about the Rate My Routes feature. What happens to the Love to Ride app after May? Will there be a cost to using the app afterwards? Nope, the app will always be free. So that's great news. And we've been around for more than a decade. So yeah, we're very much planning on being around for another couple of decades. Is the app part of a nonprofit? No, we're a for-profit company. We're a tech company. We obviously partner with a lot of nonprofits around the world to do this work and all the good stuff that we do with our partners. Have you sent a direct email to bicycle-friendly businesses about this awesome app? I don't know if we have yet. That's on the League's camp who manage that audience, so I'll leave that with Lauren and Marley to figure out. I'm sure emails are going out and will continue to go out, especially as we get closer to Bike Month, to let people know, more people know about this. I feel like I'm talking a lot. Does someone else want to talk or at least answer the questions? I'm sick of my own voice.
I think you're doing great because a lot of these questions are very much, tailored to your expertise.
All right.
We will reach out to BFBs with some links. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Marley. A question about the Rate My Routes feature. Can different map layers be toggled on and off by the user? I'd love a more Street View look to help remind me of where good or bad road conditions were. It's a great point. We have at the moment one view. We use a tool called Mapbox, which is kind of like Google Maps, but it's a bit more flexible in how we can use it on a phone. One of the things that we're doing is that we're making the ratings trip specific. So we're sort of linking the rating you've done to a specific trip. So to help people think, oh, when was I doing that? I was doing that then, and it was like this. No doubt as we improve the feature, we will be looking to make it even easier for people to give accurate ratings based on their recollection of their trip and journey. Are you able to designate in an optional note or something tied to each section why a road got the rating the user decided? Example, poor pavement conditions is a different issue, i.e. fix, than poor visibility between bicyclists and motorists. Yeah, I would have shown you the sort of next iteration of this where you can highlight a segment and tell us why. We're not planning on having that ready for Bike Month, but it's absolutely a feature that we want to build. There are other things that we want to do in that vein with the future of this app. And one of them is to collect bike crash data. Lots of bike crashes are not reported anywhere in any official database, and neither are near misses. And so it's going to be great to have another easy way of telling us where you've had some bike crashes, if you're, it happens sometimes, and when you've had some near misses. And of course, to note some of these other issues that you see on your community, sort of a pin dropping feature. So that's coming down the line. I didn't want to talk about it much today. There's plenty of good stuff for people to do to contribute to this data collection effort by tracking their routes, showing where they're riding in their community, where are the routes people are actually riding their bikes, and of course giving this feedback of route rating. But the next more detailed look is coming down the line. Have you achieved any infrastructure improvements based on the data collected so far? How could we support that process at the local level? Greetings from Macon, Georgia. I live in Atlanta, Georgia, so just down the road. I often go through Macon. No, this is all new. This is great. This is great. We are launching this with the league for this bike month. We've been testing this app for the last 6 months, and now's our time to shine and get this data. And we will be highlighting the case studies where this data is being put to good use, because we'll do this every year during bike month, a big focus on it, and we'll be able to use how the last year's data was used as part of the effort in our mission. How can the Rate My Routes feature be accessed? So you can download this app today, you can do a bike ride, and then give the server a few hours to process your trip and identify which of those colored segments, those 10-meter segments, your trip went by, and then it will show you on the app. On this screen here, this is not very clear, but you'll see it says rate, routes to rate, and you can click on that, and it'll take you there, basically, is the way to get there. Another way to get there is if you go to a trip. So I'm on the trip screen. I can click. Oh my God, it's so hard to do in the mirror. I can click that, and it says, yeah, rate this route at the top there in the menu. So I can click on that, and that'll take me to that, which I've already partially rated. So that's how you do that. Okay. I don't know how much time we've got left. Is it 40? Is we supposed to? I can keep on talking, but is there anything we want to say before we wrap up, or should I just keep answering questions?
I think we're going good on the Q&A. We've got, about 15 more minutes. If you need a break, Thomas, there's a couple questions here that I think Ken could answer.
Oh, go for it. Please do it. Give me 2
Just
minutes.
early on in the webinar, one of the questions was, so scooters are counted as bikes for the purposes of data collection?
So in the American Community Survey, there is no specific option to report that you used a scooter as your primary mode of transportation to work. It would be kind of other, and then I think you can kind of fill in a box. But it's probably not the type of thing that would be broken out in most presentations of that data because it's not an option. National Household Travel Survey, they allowed the recording of scooter trips. But if we had 298 bike trips for the country as our sample size, I would imagine scooters were a much smaller percentage or much smaller sample size. So you might be looking at like a couple dozen trips and trying to extrapolate what that means for the entire nation, which isn't particularly helpful.
Thanks. And the other data question is, with recent tallies, has the use of hybrid electronic in-person work been accessed?
So there haven't been any methodology changes to try to deal with the hybrid work from home situation that a lot of people now have and experience. The way that the question has traditionally been asked is, what was your primary mode of transportation last week? So if you were a hybrid worker who works from home 3 days a week, your majority mode of transportation would be work from home. And the 2 days a week that you bike into work wouldn't be counted. If you biked into work 3 days a week and work from home 2, you'd be a bike commuter. So they haven't changed anything to try to capture that. It's been a longstanding issue that we've raised, that there's no way to capture people who use more than one mode of travel to get to work, and that we're missing out on a lot of occasional bike commuters, occasional walk commuters, people that sometimes take a bus home. There's a lot of variation in how people get to and from work that is just missing in our data, because it simplifies it to what mode did you use for most days for the longest distance last week.
Thank you, Ken. I think a lot of these questions remaining are app-centric. One that I think I can answer is, does the app ask you whether you consider yourself a new writer, confident writer? And I know from experience setting up my account, it does ask you. It just asks how you categorize yourself, and it goes forth with that information. And I know that Thomas gave you some information on the privacy data and the privacy statement. So if you're curious about the specifics of the data and what will be shared. I believe that's how you could access that. And Thomas, you can correct me if I'm wrong. You're muted.
Yes, if you go to the Love to Ride site, lovetoride.net, and scroll to the bottom, privacy policy, we've worked hard to make that as clear as possible. That kind of transparency about, the importance of your privacy and your data security is important to us as a team, and we want our users to know that too. I will answer some more of these questions. I know there was one that came up before about schools, and I just wanted to highlight something. We're working and talking with a lot of safe routes to school folks. If you don't know, the way that some safe routes to school programs work, it's quite manual. They're like asking people with pen and paper, like, hey, how do you get to school, and where are the problem areas? And these professional people who are doing this work are then spending weeks trying to digitize this effort, and obviously only so many parents or kids can get involved in this manual exercise. So we're talking about utilizing this app to make it easier and more enjoyable to rate your routes and to get this data digitized and being made to be useful to improve the safety of the routes that our children and families are getting to their schools. It says here, I would love for my city to get behind an app like this, but they are not in favor of backing a for-profit app. Have you worked with other municipalities to support them and encourage this app? Yeah, I mean, that's our main partners around the world are municipalities, and we've got different ways of working with them and partnering with them. And so reach out if you've got specifics. I'm sure it's nothing we haven't seen before as we look to partner with another city. It says here the Android app records vehicle trips as bike trips. Is this just part of the beta process? I also didn't have a place to rate my comfort level yet. When is expected to roll out? So that's available now. You can go and rate your routes through the app, as I mentioned. We recently made that available to everyone. So maybe something, if you've had the app for a while, you haven't seen it yet, it's available now. With the algorithm that we've developed to do the mode detection, right? It's never going to be 100%, unfortunately. We obviously work very hard to get bike trips measured as bike trips and car trips as car trips. We obviously have had a lot of success with that. I very rarely ever get any trips, bike or otherwise, recorded incorrectly, which is great. I do have an iPhone, and there are, I guess iPhone 15 kinds of iPhones out there, and probably only a few of them now still around. Android, as you know, there are a bajillion different types of devices, and they all have slightly different and slightly different hardware, essentially, right? So Android is always going to be harder for us to get on every single type of Android as high accuracy of mode detection. So some Android devices, unfortunately, just by nature of the Android ecosystem and hardware, some perform better than iPhone, and some, are just mysteries. If you've got a phone. So unfortunately, that's just kind of the nature of the beast. But needless to say, accuracy of mode detection is pretty much the number one thing that we spend time on and figuring it out. So to support any issues through the app, we love hearing from you and figuring out how we can make the app better. So you can use the app, press the buttons to report a ride, and give us some feedback if we didn't get it quite right. Okay.
Just to support you, I can
yeah.
answer. I mean, I can ask some questions for you, just to kind of save you some speaking time. Yeah. So will Love to Ride, the app, will it give us an accumulated mileage and similar data as Strava?
Yeah, exactly. And some other quite cool stuff. So on your app screen here, you can see I've done 17,096 rides and lots of CO2 and miles. And I got some streaks going on, and streaks are like, my record is 29 weeks and only 13 days. I've got a colleague of mine, Christian, who's done, I think someone chat who's from Love to Ride. I'm going to say it's like over a year, like over 365 days in a row. And he was on his honeymoon in like Norway, making sure every day is keeping that streak up. So yes, essentially, yes.
Fantastic. What is the minimum, what's the minimum criterion for a route to show up on the map? Is it 3 or 5 or a certain amount of? Gotcha.
That's something that we are still refining, and we're going to keep testing that to figure that out. But there will 100% be a minimum number of people, and I think it'll settle around 5 to 7. So watch this space for how we look to make that work. And it might be different for the heat map versus the comfort safety ratings map potentially. But it's one of the ongoing conversations that we're having. And as we look to visualize the data, we'll be solving for that.
Great. So one participant asked, they're curious if Strava has a rate my route feature and if that data can be combined with Love to Ride's data for more data collection.
As far as I'm aware, they don't have a rate your routes feature like ours where you can paint on the screen. One of the things that we have talked about is pulling over the Strava routes. And so instead of tracking it through start and stop on our phone or with automatic tracking, pulling routes from other devices, there are certain legal ramifications of that, like Strava, as much as they have the open API and stuff, I think there are other rules about how you can then like keep and store that. So we just need to obviously be careful to make sure we're very cautious about compliance. And so that's something we need to factor in. I would love that idea. Any way we can make it easier for people to give feedback, that's our whole jam. So yeah, we'll keep that in mind.
Fabulous. All right. We're almost done with the questions here. So, and you might have answered this one. Would Love to Ride be interested in sharing aggregated stress data with public agencies?
Yes, there'll be a
in the
public
region?
view of that. So that's not just public agencies, that's advocates, that's the public can go and view those maps. If an agency wants to get a bit more detail, excuse me, if they want to like click on a segment and see like how many people have ridden down there in the last 7 days, in the last 365 days, and filter it. Show me how new riders feel. Show me how people like who goes over this bridge, on like how do people get to this bridge or this bit of infrastructure. They want to like analyze the data and use it as part of their job and get value from it. That's one of the ways that we'll make this whole thing financially sustainable, is by delivering value and receiving, income in exchange for delivering that value.
Awesome. And the final question here is, if one is a longtime cyclist and uses routes that have been shown as safe or more pleasant, how will that be factored into the survey versus unsafe routes that you didn't choose?
So it's a great question, because we all know in our communities, there are streets that we do not ride on, that we actively avoid riding on. And so how can we tell the world that, hey, I don't ride here, but if the reason I ride is because it's awful and it's stressful and unsafe. At the moment, we don't have a feature. We've got ideas for that feature where you could basically, not so much rate a route you haven't ridden on. One of the reasons we haven't done that is because, well, there's a few reasons. One, we actually want people to ride there and experience their network and give real feedback on that. And so I guess if you're, obviously don't ride anywhere you feel unsafe, like it's not a safe place to ride. But if there is a busier road and you do ride it, then by all means rate it and let us know. That is one of the ideas we have to enable people to do things like rate routes that they haven't ridden on yet. And maybe we've also, one of the other ideas we've had is around like prioritizing, and like do 3, 200 yards. You got 3 200 yards bits that you can tell us where this is my number 1 area I'd want to get fixed. This is my number 2 area, and like help prioritize by saying, hey, this is my number 1 spot. If you fix that, oh, I'd be stoked. We have lots of ideas, and it's a good shout out actually. If you have ideas, and as you're using this app anyway, things you've wanted to see come to life, like email them in. We love hearing from you. You are an expert in riding your city and getting people on bikes, and we want to hear from you so we can, look to support you even more to get results, outcomes, and make safer communities where you are. So yeah, do reach out to us at Love to Ride.
Excellent. And that's the end of our questions. So I just want to say thank you to everyone who joined us. It was an awesome turnout. Yeah. And we're really looking forward to Bike Month and making every ride count together.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks to the league. Look forward to seeing you guys on the bikes this Bike Month. Ciao.
Thanks, Thomas.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.